Um, yeah, I'm excited to. I haven't streamed in a while. I think the last thing I did was the RBN Labor Summit segment, and man, what a treat that was, brother. Um, they did a tremendously good job. I think I've seen most of the segments that they did that day, and it was just top notch stuff. And it was actually an idea that we had floated around some months ago between us, and we were like, how the hell can this get done? And there you go. Our brothers and sisters from RBN got it done, and they did a terrific job. And that whole Chris Smalls interview, man, it was so good. And he's uh he's a brilliant organic intellectual. That's all I can really say. He might not be an intellectual in the sense of writing academic papers or whatever the fuck, but um, he understands things with such lucidity, and um, is the embodiment of like what we'd like to see the left be if it overcomes a lot of its purity fetish. Um, and yeah, like what I have in mind when I'm writing that last section of the purity fetish, for a left that overcomes that is kind of embodied in Smalls. So it was such a treat to see that interview. And I remember following him a bit 3 years ago when he first organized the Staten Island Amazon warehouse. And he was intuitively good, but he's developed so much. And he's proud to be a working class leader. Like, there's people that might talk shit about the way he dresses, and it's so fucking stupid. Because you can tell that, like, he continues to be like, I'm a working class dude. I'm a working class dude, a working class leader, and that's why we succeeded, because it was from the ranks. And that's that spirit of like Debs, you rise with the ranks and not from them, that has been absent in a lot of the mainstream Democratic Party tied labor unionism that we've seen over the last few decades.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting how what you formulated theoretically is what a lot of labor organizers know implicitly, or what you learn through going to stand on a picket line or something, right? That
Mm.
if you allow these petty political divisions to polarize us, you're playing into the working class's hands, and if you allow these culture war issues even to polarize us, or polarize you and alienate you from other members of the working class, that's exactly what the ruling class wants. So it's almost like in through his experience organizing and being one of the most successful labor organizers that we've had in the US in recent memory, he came to the same conclusion that Carlos came to in the purity fetish, that we basically need to get over these petty freaking differences and attack the empire. I mean, and it's a pretty simple thesis, but in practice, a lot of people fail to
Mm.
implement that. They fall into, you know, canceling those who they have minor disagreements with, getting overly emotional in these debates, and, you know, creating factions that don't necessarily need to be created. So,
Right, and there ends up being a lot of ego in the game, and the class positions of this are usually very similar, and the form that their politics takes, quite frankly, and this is, I was talking to you earlier about the segment that the Saturday Free School did on this, the last this past Saturday. It's kind of how Trotskyism has always worked. And a lot of these people that are functioning within these organizations, they might not explicitly align with Trotskyism. Some of them do, but they end up in their praxis engaging in the same sort of permanent opposition that Trotskyism did, and that leads absolutely nowhere. It leads absolutely nowhere. You have to be able to unite with people whom you have ideological differences with, and if you think that your ideological positions are better, then in that uh, struggling together with them and embedding your everyday life uh, and creating those bonds of struggle, those ideological perspectives might develop conjointly. Maybe you might realize that what you thought was a more enlightened worldview wasn't really that enlightened, but it was perhaps shaped a little bit by the academy and the NGOs and the media. And there might be mutual growth, but if you cross people out from the beginning on the basis of their ideological position, and you're not going to accomplish anything. And this man organized, I think it was 8,000 workers in what was, I think, the only red part of New York, Staten Island. He says that a frequent nickname for it is Trump Island. There's a bunch of Trump flags all over the place, supposedly, and he was able to do that. And he doesn't do that by going to each worker and saying, "Hey, do you agree on these issues of the left or on these issues?" He's approaching them from the standpoint of their immediate commonality as workers, and that's really what makes the that's one of the things that distinguishes like the Marxist approach to organizing from others, which is that we organize on the basis of the objective conditions of the people that we're organizing. They're workers, and the fact that they're workers puts them in an objectively revolutionary position from the standpoint of universal history. Some segments might have a little bit more of a revolutionary potential than others in a certain given moment, but at the end of the day, it's never been a thing of let's organize only the workers that already agree with us. You end up just making your political praxis a preaching to the choir sort of affair, and that gets us nowhere. It produces and reproduces the same insular spaces that we're in, and that's already something that's manufactured to work like that with social media and online, and it creates a lot of insularity, and we end up in echo chambers that don't let us, reach other people and just pit us against people whom we have more in common with than we would otherwise know if we didn't have these sort of ideological blinders that um, make us only accept those things which are purely in line with the way we think.
Yeah, it reminds me of the critique that I made of Kyle Kalinske at one point and then reposted recently. Um, in that he looks at the political realm in isolation and doesn't look enough, doesn't start his analysis from production. So if you look at politics in isolation, you may see, the MAGA people or a lot of the Trump people who are the loudest voices from that camp and be like, where's the common ground with these people? How do we work together with these people? But then if you go stand at the picket line at a John Deere strike, you'll meet a guy who maybe voted for Trump. They're probably not that vocal about it. They probably just like Trump more than Clinton. A lot of people in the Midwest voted Obama 2 years because they thought he was going to do things for the working class, and then he didn't, so they took a chance on Trump. You might meet some Trump supporters there, and it's not a big deal. And it's like, of course, we're going to stand at the picket line with these people. They're organizing class struggle, right? They're fighting against the bosses. They're literally the working class, the manufacturing working class, the industrial proletariat, in the case of the John Deere strikes, fighting against capital, and which is largely owned by shareholders like Bill Gates, which we wrote about extensively when the John Deere strikes were going on in our area. So it's like that political division, the fact that, they voted for Trump means next to nothing in an organizing situation like that. And that's what Chris Smalls is getting at. But that's the problem when, you just make politics your personality, or, make that, only be in politics because you see it as part of your online profile, or if you hyper focus on the political realm and you don't take into account economic struggle, for lack of a better word. I mean, all
And we
economic struggle is political struggle too, but
Right, and we had someone comment when we shared this 1 minute 30 second clip that we're about to watch. When we shared it on Twitter, there was someone who commented like, "Go to your website and read Lenin's What Is to Be Done," and that was like a sort of gotcha because Lenin talks there along with quoting Engels about the importance of the ideological struggle and the organizational struggle and the economic struggle, and he criticizes economism and all these wonderful things. And what's not grasped is like, it's not that you want to be loosey goosey ideologically, but that there's different spaces for different types of organizing. If you're organizing the working class and mobilizing towards a specific immediate direction of obtaining a contract or striking or whatever it is, it's not the same approach that you take towards organizing than if you're building a party or deciding what person is cut out ideologically, in terms of character, right? It's not just ideological positioning, it's in terms of character. What sort of person is cut out to be a member of, say, a communist party or something, right? The level of standards should be different. And I think a lot of people end up taking these writings that are done by various communist leaders that emphasize like party discipline and ideological, not ideological uniformity, but like unity of action, and these different things, and they very much misinterpret them. Usually, it's not just their fault as individuals. It's um, there's objective conditions which produce on a mass level on the left so many different forms of misinterpretations of Marxism and Marxism-Leninism in various individuals, right? It's not just a subjective epistemological problem, but people end up then taking like the standard of what it takes to be a party member or something, and they apply it to like organizing in general without realizing that those sorts of standards do not apply for certain forms of economic organizing, which we're almost completely in lack of in the US. Like it's only 10% of the workforce that's unionized. And one of the statistics that's never talked about, I don't even know how they would study it, but is what percentage of that unionized part of the working class is even active? Like what percentage of a lot of those people that are paying dues, um, feel like their union reps represent them? Are they active in the union processes? And a lot of our friends in rail and in different industries, they tell us it's hard to get even the union guys to be active or to care. There's so much like disenchantment and distrust in the leaders, and in part it's rightly so. A lot of these labor leaders have sold out for a very long time to the Democrats and to the bourgeoisie, and have done the archetypical form of politics that in the Marxist-Leninist tradition we call right opportunism, and it's rooted in these sort of labor aristocrats, people that sell out the long-term interests of the working class for the short-term crumbs that they can get from the bourgeoisie, which is usually rooted in the imperialist loot of the third world and in the super profits that are acquired through imperialism. And Chris Smalls is just completely going against this grain, and he's connecting the struggle of the international working class against imperialism to the struggle of the working class here at home, and he's bringing it home in basically every fucking area, and it's almost surreal to see that um, that that he's been able to embody basically everything that we've been saying is fucked up in the left and that we should overcome. He's embodied the overcoming of it.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add to what you said about unions. I mean, we've even had unions participating internationally in color revolutions, like what happened in Poland with the so-called Solidarity Union that basically ended up leading a Western-backed coup. So, that's the kind of opportunism that we have to fight against, and that Lenin said that we have to fight against. And that's the point of Marxism, and that's the point of educating and training people ideologically. Not just hyper focusing on the trade union struggle, but it's extremely important, right? And it's extreme. And for that reason, it's extremely important for communists to have a connection with that struggle and with the trade unions explicitly. And that's why it's awesome, like that Chris Smalls went on RBN, who are Black Marxists, who are very present at Midwestern Marx Academy classes, just explicitly learning Marxism. And you have Chris Smalls also going to Cuba and being educated by them. And clearly, he's learning rhetoric. His public speaking is getting better and better. I mean, it's always been good because he just, spits facts, speaks from the heart, and what he's saying is relatable and true for so many people. But his rhetoric is getting even sharper, and like these are the kind of organic leaders that are going to emerge as the class struggle continues, right? And as things heat up, as Marxism really starts to take root in America, and as the working class starts to fight back after 40 plus years of neoliberalism. And Yeah, yeah, it's great to see. Like he's gonna lead a lot of this younger generation in a positive direction, and like the people who get nihilistic about the future, I just don't understand it anymore. You know, like look at what's going on in America. You know, don't listen to the cable media that tries to fill you with nihilism and polarization. Look at what's going on with the class struggle. Look at what's going on with the trade union movement. Look at the expansion of educational institutes like Midwestern Marx, how fast we're growing in America, how fast we're taking hold in America. And then look internationally. You know, look at the growth of China and the BRICS nations and what's going on in Africa that we're going to cover a little bit later. So,
You want to close off maybe the discussion on Smalls
good idea.
with the video? Because I
Yes,
mean, he puts it in better words than I think any of us could have put it in. He's
good
just
point.
so succinct in that clip.
On people because
You got to replay it because it was muted at first.
doesn't
Uh,
So
I
this
had
is
muted
Chris
it when you were
Smalls
playing.
at the RBN Labor Summit that we were also present at. It was a great event.
and that's what it comes down to organizing. You know, I don't put labels on people because that just puts us in categories right there, right off the bat. You already, oh, this one's on the left, this one's on the right. Oh, we can't talk about this, we can't talk about that. You can't do that when you're organizing, 8,000 people at a warehouse, and the only red borough in New York City, Staten Island, it's the only red borough. Trump Island, like you said, it's Trump Island. Trump flags everywhere, conservatives everywhere. It's there. The racism, the policing is there. The poverty is there. So when I'm talking to a worker, I don't care about their beliefs in politics. The enemy is your job, your employer, your boss. What is Jeff Bezos, what has Amazon done to you today? What is affecting you in the workplace? And that's how we was able to build solidarity because we kept it work related. And that's what we have to do in order to be inclusive in all these movements. You may not agree on everything. And of course, there's going to be ops all around us. The ops is here. The ops is here. But sometimes we gotta do with the cards, deal with the cards we're dealt. And unfortunately, when you're organizing people, you have to trust everybody. That's the thing. You have to trust people you don't know. That's the only way you build, is by trusting people you don't know. And your ideology is not going to align. But once again, there's nobody on this planet that agree 100% with somebody else. It's impossible.
That's just freaking
All right,
awesome.
Alexander.
And that's where I don't know. I work with young people and college kids for a living, and I just see them following a guy like that. Like he speaks their language. It doesn't sound forced. Like a lot of these right-wing conservative grifters sound. Yeah, he's a great leader.
And he's from the people, and that's one of the things that the left, like, I'm sorry, man, and I wish it wasn't like this, but there's a certain form of like middle class elitism in the left that divorces it and its form of like relationality from the people. And here you have someone again from a working class background. Um, One of the big factors in like uh, helping him in the process of unionizing this effort, which was historic because they tried in Alabama and they failed, and I think they tried in Staten Island before him, and they had also failed. But he was doing things that were breaking with like the traditions of what he called the dinosaurs of unionizing, where it was very like strict professionalist. Like he was out there doing barbecues with people, um, giving out weed. Like it's a form of praxis that's in tune to like the community, and you can tell he's like when he's organizing, it doesn't feel like, oh, the suits came in from the academy to tell us to do X, Y, or Z. And, they look a whole lot like the people from the HR meetings and talk a whole lot like the people from the diversity, equity, and inclusion meetings. But they say that we're our friends and that what they're telling us is for our own good, which is the opposite of these people that maybe we could see they're directly our enemies. No, like this is a guy that's from the people, and that's why he won the people's trust. And we have to remember, I can't remember specifically what thesis it is, but one of the central one very important line from Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach: the educators must themselves be educated. The left thinks that it can just go down to the masses and raise them up by treating them condescendingly and by only like teaching the masses and only guiding them almost like by force. And part of, gaining the masses trust, part of being able to lead the masses successfully is learning from them, being amongst them, not looking like you're this alien creature when you're around them and they're talking a certain way, you're hanging on a certain way, you're cracking certain types of jokes, and you're like, oh my God, you can't say that. That'll get you canceled on Twitter or whatever the fuck. Like, you have to learn from the people. And that means that different communities are going to be different. Maybe some of the sections of the reproletariat that have some of that middle class background in terms of their social consciousness, but their material position has changed, and materially they align more today with the proletariat than they did in the last eras. Maybe, the approach you take to them is different, right? But for the vast majority of regular poor and working class people, the left just has this great disconnect, and um, they have to first learn from the people, be amongst them, and then they can lead. They're not going to win no one's trust if they're coming down on the people in a very top-down fashion, in similar ways, in ways that resemble like management.
Right, or an HR meeting, like you and Noah always like to say. Yeah, and that's what, coincidentally, that's what RBN does so well too, is they just immerse themselves in the community.